So this is just going to be a little update on just my, equity market read. Now, I do think that this is not going to be our test anymore, and I don't really think that that's going to be much of an issue. A lot of the binary events that occur this week can really catalyze some counterparty liquidity. We have Microsoft, Meta, Tesla, Apple earnings. We have Nvidia in a couple of weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, we have Google next week, AMD next week, Amazon next week. We have the Fed meeting. We have PPI. So all these things can play a really big role, really catalyze and spark some buying interest that can offer an opportunity for counterparty fills, especially if we get a push to 7,000. So it's not, it's obviously I thought it would be our test of demand following a UTAD, but it seems like that's not going to be the case. And the way that last Wednesday's expiration kind of occurred with this big news pop, I thought it would end up being a big opportunity for counterparty fills. However, we see an inside bar on Friday and a nice pop into the Tuesday session, and it doesn't seem like that's going to be our test, right? We didn't really, to end the week, get like a significantly strong push from the sellers. We got a small inside bar heading into a data-packed week. So I don't think that I'm wrong in the sense. I think that we'll get a true UTAD and then a subsequent test probably after filling this gap, right? If we can get like a pop, a breakdown, and then our test probably off of this 6,900 range, and then we can short this to 670. I don't think I'm wrong here. I think that there's not a significant amount of effort backing this result. It's more or less just a passive seller. I do think that they're probably bidding this gap below, which is why that's my target. But I would like to see those earnings reports and catalyst/binary events pass by before you get really aggressive short side, right? Because even when we look at last year, we kind of saw what I think we're seeing is that path of least resistance at 653. But we saw this kind of take a little bit in the February expiration, ended up being our interim top for the next, 5 months. But it took time, and we have the signs and we have the targets below. It just takes a little bit of time, right? QQQ could head for a true UTAD, right? We have this 632 gap that's about to be filled. I would not be opposed to seeing these October highs taken out, a new high of year, like yearly high. They're taking out last year's high, I guess you could say. Could definitely is a very liquid range, right? The semiconductor space still doesn't necessarily look very appealing to me. We have AMD report next week, but this is a very gross chart. There's not really much of an edge here. And then same with Nvidia. I do love a potential true UTAD to be put in above the October highs. Just don't really have you look at this range being established, right? Like here's a sign, here's a big pop of potential UT, like our preliminary support or preliminary supply, climax UT. We've seen an attempt at a lower high here be met with like a significantly notable buyer within an in log, getting like 2 red to green weekly closures within that gap from this week of the 22nd on, increased volume heading into a report the week of the 23rd. So I'm not opposed to this. Like, I really would like a true UTAD to be put in at the minimum, take out this earnings candle high. But like I said, even looking at last year, if we can see a significant stall in the progression above the October 22 highs, that's very reminiscent of how Q4 panned out into a subsequent last point of supply in January. And then we can kind of get the slippage to the 160 range. So that's my Nvidia outlook. Microsoft looks like a really good chart right now. I will say that. This reminds me a lot of Google in Q1 of 2025, right, where we have a distributive top, like a double top being put in, a big breakdown, and then the subsequent buyer showing his hand off of the previous highs. Now, I don't think that this will revert to new highs necessarily, at least based on the structure right now. I do think that the 500 to 540 gaps could be filled. We have a significant amount of volume last week following like some preliminary supports being established right here. We have a lot of consolidation developing, and then a quick leg down into an influx of volume on like a capitulation candle, and then a subsequent rally where we can potentially reclaim the 470 spot with the earnings report tomorrow. I'll be pretty interested to see how that looks. But this reminds me a lot of Google back here, right, where we had the distribution, we had the exhaustion, and we had the breakdown with the preliminary signs being established, and then the subsequent catalytic event kind of sparked the rally off of a pivotal point being the May 2024 or March 2024 gap fills, the September lows being taken out, sparking the subsequent rally into the gaps above, right? So we'll see how this pans out. I don't really want to play this because even if you do risk like 470 targeting 508, like that's an 8% gain. I don't really feel interested in taking commons on that. I do still like Meta. Meta still looks phenomenal, right? We obviously saw the slippage underneath this gap, kind of a reclaim to close the week out last week, right? So we ended up getting the weekly closure above 613, or yeah, 613, which is very pivotal. And now is our fourth subsequent like daily test at this 670 spot. Prior to the report after hours tomorrow, right? So I do think that this gets to pop to 695, overshoots a little bit to 710, and will ended up kind of being our sign of weakness where you can maybe flip short, targeting 550. But this was a really clean move, and like I said, we saw the breakdown under 640, no real significant selling pressure, more or less just a passive buyer into the rebound on a really nice news pop on the 22nd. So I still like Meta a lot as a commons trade and as a MET-U trade for a position to 700. This is a really nice name that I think we'll see that reversal in terms of an accumulation within a distribution, and then we can focus short side on it. I don't have much of a read on the remaining names here. Tesla report Wednesday after hours again. I do think this more than likely reverts itself down to 400. I would want to probably see 470 first. We do have a notable buyer and party showing their hand within this range, at least personally. I think that's what I see. So we can talk about silver here, right? So silver, I mean, this is a pretty simple look, right? This is a big time parabolic. I mean, from the April lows, 400% from the April lows, right? I mean, 300%. And a lot of the stuff you'll see with like these risk off assets is kind of this interested party bidding it throughout like peak fear range, and then people getting very fearful in the equity markets, transitioning their money and cash into commodities and silver and gold and getting trapped, right? You know, I mean, you look at the monthly chart, like this is probably not like a bad buy within this range. But then we see such a big rally Q4 into Q1 of this year, right? And then we begin to see, you know, this is just a simple kind of parabolic short. We begin to see these big influxes of volume the week of the 26th or the 12th. We see the gaps continue, and we see the exhaustion very evidently show within the silver chart. Just because of the fact that, like I said, we see these big exhaustive gaps, internal structures, and big time kind of euphoria within this name into a giant new week opening gap and a very notable influx of volume at the highs at $100, right? And so now this is something that we can definitely play off of. Let's see, this might be the highest volume ever by a significant amount, 393 million. Let's look back at 2008. Yeah, that's 2011. That is the most volume we've ever had on silver by a good amount. And it's just kind of like, yeah, you probably could have traded futures, and futures is kind of putting in a lower high at the current moment in time, or a potential lower high. But I want to preface the fact that you want to be a little bit more patient, and you can definitely catch like this yesterday on like options, but I have a preferred vehicle of ZLV or ZSL, which has 830 million volume traded, right? This is like a 2x leverage silver ETF or just equity. This has an insane amount of volume traded yesterday. This is very kind of volatile, and I really, you know, a 23% reversal from the low of day yesterday, which is insane to me. But I really am focused on trading this, and I do want to take silver down to if I had to say, like for a shorter term position, 87, $90, and then look to re-roll it down to 70 to 76. but I want to be a little bit patient, right? We have a big gap to fill here. I want to wait until we have a clear-cut risk because you can take it off of this candle. We can always see like this candle taken out and a lower high being put in, right? There's a lot of liquidity built up here, and this could end up being like a parabolic top, kind of like an MSTR, where it's just our inevitable all-time high that has so much intent and effort behind it that there's no need for this high to be taken out regardless of how liquid it is. Or we could end up with a UNH where this low gets taken out and then the opportunity really shows itself on like an internal structure. So I really want to be patient with that. I do still like BABA. I didn't build out a position down here at 147 like I would have wanted via BABX. But if we can see a sweep of 157 and a really nice like in-log gap attempt, that's a pretty nice solid risk of about 10 points. Risking this, you know, resistance to flip to support and progression gap reclaim, but a 7% risk, 14 on BABX for a 42% return with your target inevitably being the break of structure. So I would wait on that. Core weave was pretty nice, just like a 3 lower low accumulation off the report, off of these lows that were really notably like notably exhausted sellers. A gap up that failed and a subsequent buyer showing his hand, and then a reclaim of this April all-time high, or previous all-time high from April 2025. Take out those lows, get a nice, harmonic pop and higher low to complete this accumulation to rally us to 105. I mean, from this candle right here, it's a 50% return. That's butter. I like that a lot. Path hasn't really shown me much that I like. I do still think 21 is potentially there, but it hasn't really, we break structure and we fail the gap and then we're deep in a discount. I'd like to give this a little bit more time. I'd like to give MSTR a little bit more time, but I do think this reverts itself to 230 relatively soon, potentially, unless just the entire risk on market and Bitcoin takes a hit. Energy names still look decent. I just don't think that it's the greatest look right now. I'm sorry. I think that there's potentially a better opportunity setting up, but a long-term position is not something I would stray away from. But Disney, good comments trade. I think $100 is another spot to add down there for a position of 126. UNH getting beaten up off the report is very appealing to me, right? Like I said, this was a notable footprint beginning in May, following a distribution that was completed. One campaign ends, another begins. We see this significant intent behind this candle result in a really nice rally and then a subsequent stall. Those lows are taken out. We see an internal structure. We rally this. We see the higher low. We see a push into the gap. We see the progression stall within said gap. We see a breakdown. We don't really see a significant buyer within this range. And now we're seeing that August 15th Warren Buffett gap being filled, and we're seeing it happen off of an earnings report. And we're seeing a higher low potentially being put in for like an LPS, right? There's multiple opportunities. There's a shorter term UNHG trade you can take here to these gaps in 335 to 380. There's a longer term position you can take here to target 438 to 480. And I do think that this is a spot to add into that position and then look for another shorter term opportunity to develop, which I will be doing. Waiting on semiconductor distribution to really show its hand. I do think that AVGO offers a short, but I think it's more than likely going to be in the form of a reversal into this earnings gap. A lot of these data and software names look really good. At least for a nice little reversal. We have IGV, the software sector ETF, putting in a lot of volume last week. We have Adobe looking pretty nice. I do like this chart right now. I do like CRM in this range. I think that these are very notable accumulations that you need to wait for an opportunity, but they're happening. Oracle looks pretty good. Datadog doesn't look the worst. I mean, I don't mind these names, but they don't give you a crystal clear entry quite yet. Moderna, I mean, this was insane off just a commons opportunity at $30, cover, re-add, rally up into where this accumulation began. I don't necessarily like it much more right now. I mean, this is a nice little 2-day pattern, but this is going to begin to exhaust itself and most likely revert to the mean. I don't know. I'm not going to say that with 100% certainty, just because this campaign has a lot of effort and intent, and it's very well established, right? Cause and effect. There's a large cause built out here, but we've already surpassed where this accumulation kind of began at the $35 spot, where an initial low was kind of put in on the influx of volume. I look for that $62 spot, but I don't really think that now is a good time to enter on this name, right? So to kind of recap, what am I watching? ZSL. I think, oh my God, there's so much volume being traded on this. I think ZSL is going to be a great opportunity. I just want to wait, right? I would rather gap fill, lower high, target 87, right? That's a great kind of risk to reward via ZSL as your vehicle, or something similar with UNH as this high being taken out. BABA, if we can see a 157 breakdown, I really like that. Otherwise, I'm just kind of waiting for a UTAD to be put in and the earnings reports to give you a significant catalyst. Maybe FOMC, we see something that sparks a lot of buying and can really generate those counterparty fills. So that's pretty much it, man. It's not anything different. UNH, I really like UNH giving you this high or low, and I'm going to really be focused on this going forward as far as a longer term and shorter term commons trade.